Hello there. Hello there. Matter of course. The Architectures of Power, a critical examination of communism, socialism, capitalism, and imperialism. Trigger warning, it's political. To analyze communism, socialism, capitalism, and imperialism is not merely to compare economic models, but to dissect competing visions of human organization, power, and value. Each system presents a framework for allocating resources and structuring society, yet each is haunted by a gap between its theoretical ideals and its practical historical application. A critical understanding requires separating the blueprint from the building and the architect's intent from the lived experience of its inhabitants. Capitalism, the engine of innovation and inequality. Capitalism, in its ideal form, is an economic system characterized by private ownership of the means of production, competitive markets, and the pursuit of profit. Its core strength lies in its harnessing of individual self interest to drive innovation, efficiency, and economic growth. By incentivizing risk and rewarding success, capitalist systems have generated unprecedented material wealth and technological advancement. However, a critical analysis must confront its inherent contradictions. The relentless pursuit of profit and growth often leads to severe economic inequality as wealth tends to consolidate within a small capitalist class. The focus on capital accumulation can commodify essential human needs like healthcare and housing, create exploitative labor conditions, and prioritize short term gains over long term sustainability, leading to environmental degradation. Furthermore, the theory of perfect competition rarely exists in practice, often giving way to monopolies and oligopolies. Excuse me. It's the times we're living in that undermine the very market forces capitalism relies upon. Socialism, the quest for equity and the challenge of incentive. Socialism emerges as a direct critique of capitalist inequity. Its fundamental principle is social ownership of the means of production, aiming to prioritize collective good over private profit. The spectrum of socialist thought is broad, ranging from democratic socialism, which seeks to implement socialist policies within a democratic regulatory framework, to more revolutionary strands. The proposed strength of socialism is its focus on reducing inequality, providing universal access to essential services, and mitigating the boom bust cycles of capitalism. By prioritizing human need over market demand, it aims to create a more equitable and stable society. The critical challenge for socialism lies in implementation. 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 English language it always makes me it all bleh. English makes me laugh. I don't really like speaking English, even though it's my first language. And maybe in my videos it seems like it's not. I think it's just the fact that I was on testosterone for 7 months and I have to learn how to read properly again. The critical challenge for socialism lies in implementation. Centralized economic planning has historically struggled with efficiency, innovation, and bureaucratic inertia. Critics argue it can dampen individual initiative and entrepreneurial spirit, the very drivers of capitalist growth. The central question becomes how can a society organize economic activity rationally and fairly without succumbing to a stifling, unresponsive bureaucracy? The balance between collective ownership and individual freedom remains its primary tension. Communism, the utopian endpoint and the authoritarian path. Communism, as theorized by Karl Marx and Engels, is a hypothetical stateless, Frederick Engels, if you don't know who I'm talking about, is a hypothetical stateless, classless, and moneyless society where the means of production are communally owned, and the principle from each according to his ability to each according to his needs guides distribution. It is envisioned as the final stage of human social evolution, resolving all contradictions of previous systems. The critical failure of communism lies entirely in its historical execution. Every attempt to achieve this utopian vision has resulted in authoritarianism, totalitarian state control, and horrific human rights abuses. The Revolutionary Vanguard Party, intended to guide the transition, consistently became a new, unaccountable ruling class, the suppression of dissent, the abolition of free markets, and the centralization of all power in the state led to economic stagnation, widespread scarcity, and the loss of basic liberties. The chasm between its emancipatory theory and its oppressive practice is so vast that communism stands as a stark warning of how the pursuit of a perfect society can rationalize immense suffering. Imperialism, the primordial logic of domination. Imperialism is not an economic system per se, but a policy or ideology of extending a nation's power and influence through colonization, use of military force, or other means of coercion. Critically, it is the external engine that has historically fueled and been fueled by all these internal systems. Capitalist imperialism. Driven by the need for new markets, raw materials, and cheap labor, capitalist nations extensively use imperial conquest. This is the core of Leninist critique, Vladimir Lenin, which argued imperialism was the highest stage of capitalism. Socialist communist imperialism. Despite their anti imperialist rhetoric, state socialist regimes like the Soviet Union engaged in a form of imperialism through the ideological and military domination of satellite states, the Eastern Bloc, exporting their model and suppressing sovereignty under the guise of international solidarity. The Eastern Bloc is just an example. Ancient imperialism. Predating these modern economic theories, the drive for empire, for land, resources, and tribute has been a constant of human history, from Rome to the Mongols. Imperialism represents the purest expression of power, the subjugation of one group by another for economic, strategic, or ideological gain. It critically demonstrates that, regardless of a nation's internal economic structure, the logic of domination can persist in its foreign policy. Conclusion. The hybrid reality and the enduring questions. And then I'm going to go get some food and be right back and probably keep on recording some videos. So, the hybrid reality and the enduring questions. In practice, no modern nation exists as a pure form of any of these systems. Most are mixed economies, blending capitalist markets with socialist safety nets. Examples: the Nordic model. The critical lesson is that every system contains within it the seeds of its own pathology. Capitalism tends toward corrosive inequality, socialism toward bureaucratic stagnation, and communism toward totalitarian oppression. Imperialism reveals that any system, if unchecked by ethical constraints, can turn exploitative. The enduring questions are not about finding a perfect system, but about managing inherent tensions. How do we balance efficiency with equity? How do we harness individual ambition for the collective good? How do we prevent any economic system, whatever its label, from consolidating power to the point where it becomes oppressive both at home and abroad? The critical task is to learn from the brutal failures of history while pragmatically building societies that mitigate the weaknesses of their chosen economic architectures. Some food for thought for y'all from your Piscean Buddha. Have a good one.